It's that time of year again to start planning your farm. This is the time when we've got the time to do that, when we can take a step back from the farm. Even for a lot of farms that are running year-round production like ours, we're still a lot slower. There's going to be always a sort of a bell curve to the productive period of a farm season, and around January, over the holidays, just after the holidays, this is the time to plan your farm. So today, I'm going to go over the base principles of what planning a farm looks like. And I'm not going to hold your guys' hands on this. This is why I'm just going to show you the base principles, because if you understand the base principles, you can modify this any way you like. And there's other ways to do this, but I want to explain just the basics, because if you give people too much information, it can be overwhelming, and then you miss out on the basics on how you can do it yourself. And that's really what's important here. So that's what we're gonna look at. All right, so you guys have heard the saying, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. I'm going to teach you how to fish today. Let's look at our chart here. So I've made a variety of columns here, and I've just improvised this. This isn't how I've done it myself each year. But I think this is the basics on what you need to look at in order to get started. So our first column is every week of our entire year. So I just looked at a calendar and I went and put in January 2nd through 8th is Monday to Friday, first week of January, so on and so forth. Next column is our crop. What is the crop we're going to plant? Next column is the market stream you're going to sell that crop in. So for today's demonstration, I'm just going to talk about CSAs and farmers markets, the unit size of the crop or product for that market stream. So we're going to talk about an example down here. I've just listed a few crops that would be available at this time. Radishes, how many of those bunches I want to have, how much they weigh, and how many total pounds that weighs. Next one here is farmers market, how many of those units I'm going to take to the market, how much they weigh, and what the total weight of that harvest is. Then this total weight here is going to be a combination of both. It's going to be this plus this. This column here is the days to maturity. How many days does it take for this crop to mature? And this is where it will get complicated. I'll go back to this in a second. I'm just going to explain the chart first. The start date of when that crop needs to be planted, the end date of when we expect to harvest it, and then how many beds of that crop we want to plant in the field based on our previous information, which I'll get to in a second. So let's just go up to the first week of May. That's when a lot of farms are starting to have product available for their various market streams. And you know, there's many different market streams, but today, just for this demonstration, I'm just going to talk about a CSA and a farmer's market. So let's just say for our first CSA box of the season, I'm going to have these crops available. And we could put more in there, but that's just what we're going to say we have for now. You can come to this, you can figure this out by, if you use a seed catalog. This is the West Coast Seeds catalog for those of you in Canada. It's got a great chart at the beginning of the catalog, which shows each season of the year, all the annual vegetables that they grow or that they sell, and then what time you could seed or plant that crop in the field. So it's very useful to get an idea of what crops might be available at each time of the season. Because when you're starting out, you don't know, right? You might know intuitively that lettuce is available in the spring, but when exactly does lettuce usually come online? You can find that information out with a seed catalog like this, but you can also talk to farmers. Go to shop at a farmer's market. If you don't shop at a farmer's market, you should anyways, because you can learn an incredible amount of information just by being there and shopping. You'll see when the farmers have certain crops available. And when I started, that was my base information of how I figured out how to plan my farm. So we can deduct, you know, what are the vegetables that would be ready around this time and make a list of that. So over here, on this side of the chart, this is a list of all the crops I'm going to grow and the seasonality of when those crops will be available. So it's going to be different for everybody. But for myself, I can typically have lettuce between April and November, arugula between April and November, pea shoots year-round, so on and so forth. I won't go through all of this. Carrots might be the same thing, June through November. Once you have that base, then you know what you can put into your chart, into your plan here. So let's just go ahead to early May, And let's just say we're going to be selling at farmers markets and CSAs only. And these are the vegetables that I expect to have ready for that first week of May. And I might have a 20-member CSA program, and with CSAs it's really easy because you have a certain amount of boxes and you know exactly what's going to go in those boxes, and it's a guaranteed sale. Farmers markets are a little bit more complicated in the sense that you can plan to bring a certain amount of stuff, but it's not a guarantee you're going to sell it. So a CSA is a really easy way to plan a farm. And so if that's the case, we can say, okay, we've got 20 members, we'll have 20 bunches of radishes, 20 bags of arugula, 20 bags of lettuce, 20 bags of turnips, so on and so forth. Each of these items will have the weight that you would want to put them at. So my radishes weigh ½ pound each without greens. The bags of arugula and lettuce weigh ¼ pound, and so on and so forth. Cilantro bunches weigh 2 ounces. Then I just go and figure out how much that weighs in total, but you just click on this, you go equals this times this equals 10 pounds. So for my total CSA harvest at this time, I need to have 10 pounds of radishes. So let's look at a farmer's market then. I want to sell at a market at that same time, and just for the sake of the demonstration, let's just pretend I'm going to bring all the same things that are in my CSA box and pile them up on a table at the farmer's market, and it's going to be the same amount of stuff. It could be whatever. It could be 30 items. It could be, let's just say I take 30 of each of these. And I've got the same calculation there that was on the CSA one for my total weight. So now what I do is I've got another column here that's the total weight, which is going to be the combination of the weight for the CSA products and the weight for the farmers market products. So I go equals total weight here plus total weight here. Gives me that, and then I can copy and paste this down here. So for first week of May, I know I want to have these crops available, and I'm going to need to have this much total weight for those crops available. Now this is where it starts to get more complicated. If I know my end harvest date is May 1st, how do I know when to plant those crops in the ground? So here, this column here is my dates to maturity. So if you look in your seed catalog and we go, okay, let's look at radish. Flip open your catalog, it's going to say 28 days to maturity, 28 DTM. That is the average days to maturity of that crop, meaning that if you were to plant that crop in mid-May to mid-September, it'll be mature around that time. But it doesn't count for the colder seasons at the beginning and end. It also doesn't really count for the hot summer either. It's the average days to maturity. So in my experience, on the springtime, radishes take about 40 days. And that varies too, right? It isn't just winter, spring, summer, fall. It's every week it gets slightly different. And this is why using spreadsheets and recording your information on your farm is so important, because then it'll allow you to learn all the nuances of your area, which nobody can really teach you. They can teach you if they're local, but somebody like me trying to guess what the average days to maturity of, or the spring days to maturity of radish down in South Carolina, it's a crapshoot. I would just guess. Whereas I could tell you exactly what it is for me. So for myself, radishes in the early spring take about 40 days. So I'll put 40 in there. And then what I do is I've got my end date in the column here. So I need to have that crop by May 1st. And so I can do a calculation of when that crop needs to go on the ground by, I go into my start date column here, I hit equals, and actually let me just backtrack a bit. I need to go 40D there. That means 40 days. So that'll convert to 5 weeks, 5 days. So I go here, equals, go May 1st minus this one here, 5 weeks, 5 days, equals March 22nd. So if I plant my radishes March 22nd, they should be ready by May 1st. So another thing here, another can of worms, but I won't go into it too much, is that if you're using season extension, that changes all these things. I'm talking about if you plant right in the field, how long these days to maturity will change. The beautiful thing about using season extension, whether it be poly-low tunnels, high tunnels, greenhouses, you name it, those are going to allow you to expedite your days to maturity. So, for example, if I plant radishes in April in a greenhouse, they will be ready in 28 days. But if I plant radishes in April in the ground, they'll be around 40 days. See what I mean? So, so there's all these variables here, but I just want to approach this from a base principle standpoint. So I can do that. I can do the same. So I go in here and put in all my other days to maturity on what I think they're going to be. And again, you're going to have to do your own research to figure out when crops are going to be ready. So let's just say, for the sake of the discussion here, arugula is about the same as radishes, which is true. Lettuce might be about 50 days that time of year. Turnips might be about 45 days. Cilantro could be about 40 days. Mustard greens will be the same as arugula. They'll be 40 days that time of year. So now I can just copy this and paste this formula in here. Command V, paste it in. So here's all my planting dates. And again, this isn't perfect, but this is where you start. So now, to finish your crop plan, you're going to go through and do the same exercise for every week of the season. You're going to put the same thing in. So week after week, you know, what I did when I ran a CSA is, let's just say this same time of year, I had these crops ready, and it wasn't much different the next week. And there's probably a few more we could add here. I would alternate, right? So say I had 10 crops that I knew I could have available during that time. I'm only going to put maybe 6 to 8 in the box. Some things will be in that box each week, like, you know, there'll be a salad mix each week, but then maybe I'll alternate from spinach to arugula one week to the next. That's how you bring in some variability. And then, you know, you come down here into first week of August, this is where you're going to have a ton of crops available. You're going to have your tomatoes, you're going to have your carrots, you're going to have all that kind of stuff. And so you're going to go down and figure out what each thing you're going to have for each week. It's quite tedious, and this is why it takes time to do. And what all those things are, and then figure out their days to maturity. But the days to maturity will change throughout the season. So just to give you an idea of how it works for me in my area, let's use radishes again. 28 days to maturity according to the catalog. Well, if I plant radishes in April in the field with no any season extension, they might be 45 days. If I plant them, well, no, maybe that would be March. If I planted in like mid-March, radishes would be ready 45 days. If I planted in April, they'd be ready in 40 days. If I planted them in May, now they're down to about 30 days. If I plant them in June, they're probably down to 28 days. July and August, 21 days. September, they're up to probably 28 days. October, maybe it's 40 days. See what I mean? How there's this sort of this bell curve of production, and that really has to do with your season. So it's so important to understand how much daylight you get in your own place. Like for where I am, we get up to 18 hours of daylight at our summer solstice, and we get a little bit below 8 hours of daylight at our winter solstice. So there is a lot of variability there, and it's really important to understand how that plays out for you. But the best way to figure this information out is shop at a farmer's market, ask farmers questions. Hey, when do you plant radishes in the spring? When are they usually ready? You know, if you're a paying customer and you're making those conversations, those are totally reasonable things to ask. And most farmers are going to be happy to share that information with you. And I learned a ton when I started by just going out and getting to find out a lot of that local knowledge, because people like me can't tell you exactly when things are going to be ready for you in your climate. So that is the base principles of crop planning. I'm going to keep it simple and keep it at that for now. I'm going to give you guys some homework. If you're new to farming or you're interested in getting started, go and make a list of all the things you want to grow. And then go and figure out when those crops are typically in your region seasonally available. Then go and figure out what you think the days to maturity are going to be. Maybe figure out 4 days to maturity. So for spring, summer, fall, maybe skip the winter. Just go with the spring, summer, fall. Figure out what the days to maturity are. When you look in the seed catalog and you see 28 days to maturity for radishes, keep in mind that's going to be the average and it's mostly the summer. So you're going to add a period, you know, a certain amount of days for the spring and add a certain amount of days for the fall. And you're going to just get yourself a framework of what it's going to look like. Then go and put each of those crops that you want to have into each week of the season. And, you know, there's going to be a little bit less at the beginning, tons in the summer, and usually a lot in the fall. So start with that. Let me know how it goes for you. Leave your questions and comments below, and I'll try to make some more videos on this when I take a look at the kind of questions you guys have. All right, talk to you soon.